All right. So just for the sake of ease of looking at the demo, I am going to be mostly using the larger brush marker, but these things can certainly be done with smaller, the smaller markers as well, like the Faber-Castell or the Fudenosuke marker, and those were listed in your packet as well. But if you decide to use the smaller markers, you can always just take out the smaller grids, and those are in your packets as well. Just to give you, we talked right at the end of last class, just to give you the little bit better proportion with the size of pen. Okay. And maybe I'll do some of that, but I know it's just easier to demo with the big ones. So let's start with the bigger grid. So here's my larger grid that I'm going to use today. So we talked about our, get my camera here. So we talked about the idea of our letters, and we learned those basic strokes, and we broke up our letters into, and I'm just going to see if I can remember most of them here. And we broke up our letters into parts, right? We had some of these basic strokes, the heavy downstrokes and the lighter upstrokes. And then we went along and put our letters together using these parts. Oh, let's see, there was a diagonal, a little flick. We'll remember some more as we go along, because I don't have them in front of me. But as we make our letters, we put these parts together. And there's my cat coming to say hi. And then as we were doing these letters, we were looking for things to be consistent, right? Oh, our horizontal stroke. There was another basic stroke. And so as we would write our letters or our words, we would look for those heavy strokes to be about the same and the thin strokes to be all about the same and our slant to be about the same. And that's another thing too, if you feel like you need to use your slant, which is right, look, capital, where's my slant paper? Oh, it's at the very end. So if you feel free to use the slant if that helps you keep a consistent slant. But then always fun to try without the slant as well. Eventually, I'm going to have you try, like next week when we do envelopes, try maybe even not even using lines at all. So we'll get used to the size of the letters. So these are things that you're going to look for in your own writing. But then once we have these, this alphabet sort of in our hand, then it's fun to add this kind of stuff. So I want to show you now just ways we can use our brush to get some of these shapes and add some color. Okay. So actually for the strokes here, you don't necessarily need a grid sheet. You can always do those on a blank sheet of paper. And we'll go back to when we write some words and try some of these things on words, we'll go back to our grid. You can do it on the grid sheet if you want. But. All right, so I'm going to go through some of these fun ways to use our brush. The first one that is on your sheet, I'll kind of do them in order, is that wonderful heart. And that's just using the side of the brush with some pressure. So I don't want my hand to get in the way. So I'm just putting my brush down, point first, and then just pressing up the whole width of the brush and doing that little teardrop shape. And if I move it and put the point together with the previous one, I get these cute little hearts. And you can, I came up a little fast there, so it's smudged, so we'll go over that. You kind of come up a little bit gently so you don't lose that little point. And you can turn your hand, turn your paper, however it's easy to get, the easiest way to get that little shape going there. And it's as simple as that. Now, you can also, right away, you can start to add color. You could take a different color. I just took, this was a pink, and I just took a sort of fuchsia color, And you can even add just a little tip of color into your hearts or your little teardrop shapes there too. So already we can start adding layers of color. Now, if you bought, I think I mentioned the blender last time. If you bought a set of Tombos, they often come with a blender. And basically what that is a clear marker. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I don't know how easy it's going to be to see. There's my little hearts. And you can take this clear blender. Now I've used it so it's just stained a little bit, but it's just clear. And you can blend the colors together. And this will work better on some papers than others. It's working okay on this copy paper. A cardstock might be better. Or sometimes you can get those envelopes. I think Strathmore makes them. And they're, excuse me, they're a little card and envelope set, and they're blank. You can usually buy those at like a Michael's or something, or Wet Paint in St. Paul, I know has them. But anyway, it's just a little bit more substantial paper, almost like a watercolor paper. That it blends really well on nicer paper like that. I can give you some names of some paper if you do other work like watercolor. Certainly any watercolor paper would work. There's another brand called Canson, C-A-N-S-O-N. It comes in beautiful colors, sometimes in big sheets, but I think you can get them in pads as well. But that's another not too expensive but nice paper. It's got a little bit of a texture to it. I can even give you, I'm going to put a note here, maybe list some other kinds of papers as well. Okay, but just that, all that to say that this blender can really work well if you have a little bit nicer paper than our copy paper. But that's one way to get our color in there. Now, right away, since we're zoomed in, there's other ways we can decorate these little hearts. We've got that bullet point, if you remember, or if you have your smaller markers, you can use the point of that as well, and you can simply outline what you've already done. Okay, and I've just left this little white gap in here. You can make that gap a little smaller if you like. But you can outline, oh, and I hear somebody else coming. Martha Claire is here. We'll give her a second to get her audio in here. Let us know, let me know I can hear you there, Martha. Okay. Let me just double check, because she doesn't have her video. Martha, I can see that you're here. I just want to make sure you can hear me. You good? Can you unmute yourself just for a second? Hey, Martha. I just want to make sure your audio is working. Martha. Okay, well, I will assume that she will say something if she just can't hear me. So she might have just signed in and then gotten a cup of coffee and she's coming back. So I will pin my video again. So again, just outlining is a great way to add more dimension. You can certainly outline in different colors, and we'll do more of that as we go along. Another fun way to use that little sort of teardrop where we press into the paper is to make flowers. And I definitely will turn my hand a lot for that. As I press my little teardrop shape on my brush, I might even turn my paper just to get in the right position to make those little flowers. And again, you can use a contrasting color or the same color, and you can even give it some outline if you want. That's what I said, cuter the better. And I love dots. There's always place to add dots with your bullet point. Or with, I know we talked a little bit about maybe the Jelly Roll markers or something like that. Those are always good to get some dots in there. Alrighty. And oh, another fun thing, I'm gonna grab some green here. And these are all on your sheet, but I just thought I'd show you how we made them. But if you grab a couple different greens or one green, if you don't have green, you can certainly do this same pattern. But if you make a line, I usually just make a maybe a broad S line, or maybe just a little, maybe an eyelash like we're used to. Hi Martha, I see you now. Welcome. And you can hear us okay, right? I just want to make sure. Okay, we just got started. Okay, and you can, if you have background noise, you can mute yourself. It doesn't sound like you do, but I think with just the three of us, well, you can certainly stay unmuted and just chime in if you have a question, okay? With a few people, I think it'll work out just fine. So if you make maybe a gentle S or an eyelash stroke with your bullet point, and then you can make our little teardrop shapes like we did here, you can make some leaves. If you have the point going away from this is going to become the stem. If you have your point going away from the stem and press toward your stem with your brush, you can make leaves. And if you make them smaller and smaller, then it looks like a little branch. Okay, usually I'll turn my paper to do the other side. And here you can see they don't even have to touch. They can, if you want them to. And I just press that little bit of the brush onto the paper and get this little teardrop shape. It takes a little bit of control. Sometimes if you lift too quickly, it might smudge the tip. So just kind of practice that control. Now you could also have the tip going toward the stem. Nothing wrong with doing it the other way. And it's just a little different look to your leaves, but you might have leaves that look like that too. Right? So just a fun, simple way to make these decorations. If we add these, say you did a name on an envelope and we added some of these vines, I mean, it'll just be a great way to add flowers and vines. And who knew we could draw those, right? I don't consider myself an illustrator at all. This is kind of how I make my decorations. You can also add color if you want, just like we did with the heart, just to maybe the tips of the leaves. Just another way to add some more color. Now, if you only had a couple, because I said you only needed a couple colors to do this class, you can certainly at some point get some more, or you can just practice these with whatever colors you might have. They do come in, I think it's 10 packs. You can get them individually, but 10 packs of color give you, red, yellow, give you a whole range, red, yellow, green, orange, purple, and then usually the blender. And then the last thing I had on there was just a combination of these two. So you can make your stem, and then of course, why not add those little marks and make a flower. And again, we can outline very loosely, and dots are always nice with our bullet point. Okay, so that's how those are made. There's just some other lines that you can make with these guys. If you do sort of a pressure and release, you can get an interesting organic line. If I just move across and give it some pressure and release, thick and thin, you can make a nice wavy line. You can, that was just happened to be horizontal. We can do that vertically, and I'm just pressing and pulling as I continue that stroke. You can, I have on the sheet there in your packet, I have a frame. So all I did for the frame was do that pressure and release kind of thing while I kept moving around a general sort of rectangle. And I just did it in pieces. It doesn't have to be all one line, although it could. So it just gives it a little bit more interest than something that just has the same thickness. And I like to combine this sort of quality line, again, using the bullet point. It's kind of nice to have some contrast of the thick and thin lines. So maybe just some, I don't know, a swirl or an S stroke, you know, something that looks like an S, and then of course dots. I love dots. So just another idea of how you can layer these thick and thin strokes all with the same brush. And this is all the same color, but you can certainly use 2 different colors. And how cute would that be if you had, you know, someone's name in the middle? You know, if you made an envelope with someone's name and then decorate it with a nice frame, I think that'd be fun. That flick stroke, do you remember that flick stroke that I mentioned a couple times last week? And that was just a pressure stroke and a lift. And I'm exaggerating the lift just so you can see that I'm pulling and then lifting it off the paper, and you get sort of this triangle shape. They can be done big, small, longer if I just keep my marker on the page a little bit longer. But you still have this sort of tapered stroke. You can do them in different directions. So here I'm pressing and then just pulling up. Okay, sideways, longer. So I recommend just trying these in all different directions, all different sizes and lengths, because there's a lot of ways you can use these different strokes in your letters or in decorating, say, for example, an envelope. So let me show you a couple ways that you can do that. You can make a border. So say you did a series of these little triangles. And I'm going to turn it upside down. And I'm going to go and make another series of triangles in between with a contrasting color. And then I have this fun little border, which I think is nice. Now, of course, you can also go up without turning your paper. I just find that I'm used to doing it that way, the pull down, so I just do the way I'm most comfortable with, but you can also pull up like that and certainly not turn your paper and do the same thing. Going down. So just one way to use that flick. Another way you can actually use it to make, we did that one flower with the pressure stroke. Well, we could make some flowers with that pull stroke. So we could even do something like this, that little pull flick stroke in all different directions, meeting in the middle. And if they don't have to necessarily all meet so perfectly, because usually what I do then is go in and maybe dots or a contrasting color just to do the center. And that's a perfectly fine little flower. You can do the flick stroke the other way and have it radiate outwards. Maybe it's a flower, maybe if it's a starburst, you know, just another little, I don't know what, maybe it's fireworks, but you can use that flick stroke in that way to get that shape. On the sheet that I have there, I also have another flower, and maybe I'll use a different color here, to make a daffodil. it's a large, long flick with some shorter flicks coming into the bottom there. And then I use my bullet to make, of course it's an abstract-y kind of daffodil, but I use the bullet to kind of get the real shape of that, that daffodil. So I just outline it very quickly. You can always add another color or do some blending. I think in my example, I have some yellow going on in there. And if you add a stem, then you have a nice little, maybe I'll do some flick leaves too, all with the flick. So you can make sort of a more abstract looking flower with the flick stroke. That one's kind of cute. And I can't resist. Oh, I just love to do dots. You can always add those as well. I think that the dots just sort of give it that sort of funky, kind of abstract-y look as well. So there's a just a simple daffodil that you can make with your flick strokes. There's one, I don't know how often you might use this, but on your sheet, it's a palm tree. So the top of the palm tree is just longer flick strokes, just kind of coming out from the same area. And then, let's see, do I have maybe a brown or something? Again, you can always use your own colors. But the trunk of the palm tree is just a pressure release pressure stroke. Pressure, release a little bit, pressure. So it kind of has that little waist in it. And you just add a few of those and it emulates that look of a palm tree. And you could leave it like that, or you could outline it if you wanted to with your bullet point. Okay, just some other fun ideas with your marker. Last thing on that flick stroke is the long ones. If you practice, usually I end up pulling mine left to right, and I use that a lot when I make envelopes. I will write a name. I'm just going to use this name just because it's shorter and I can do it kind of quickly. To write a name, and then I would add this little flick stroke, this long flick stroke, and then underneath we can have our, and we'll do this more in detail when we do envelopes, but underneath then you can have maybe your address. I'm just making up our little generic address. So this flick stroke can act as a kind of a flourish to separate, you know, the name and the address. So that's kind of I like doing that stroke just to sort of separate it there a little bit. Let's see, where's my other sheet here? Oh, there it is. Okay. So those are, again, play around, and you can certainly, I'm sure, find some other ways to use this brush. It's endless with the bullet point as far as, you know, shapes, patterns that you can make. And then combining them is the fun part. So I encourage you to just, I don't know even what I'm doing. I just wanted to use that bullet point, but I encourage you to just play with these tools with some of these ideas of strokes and see what you come up with. If you draw or do yourself or do painting or something, perhaps you can create sort of some abstract images with your flick strokes or something if you're a painter or illustrator. So those are just some of the ideas that we had on that one page. Now what I'd like to do next first of all, any questions, that anyone might have on those fun little strokes there? We'll keep playing with those. And I'm going to show you now how we can add some of those to our letters. So I'm just going to use the word that we had on our sheet. Oh, did I want to show you? Let's see. Okay, I'm going to do the lowercase first. All right, so I'm going to start with a lowercase word in the hand that we were doing, the printing style. And let's explore how to use these markers and some of those fun shapes that we did to decorate our letters. So here's our, oh, sorry, I moved the camera and it needs to get focused again. There we go. So as we did last time, okay, I made just this simple word using our down heavy strokes, up lighter strokes. I'm going to connect them. We talked about those connecting strokes a little bit. I think I'll connect the V to the E like you do in cursive there. And I think that's good. So how can we use these markers to decorate some of these letters? Well, we can, one thing we can do is a simple, let me zoom in again. I think it'll help get the details here. There we go. One thing we can do is take the same color. So I just wrote this in this sort of purple color. Take the same color bullet point and outline the letter. Just right up against all the marks, and it actually just darkens the marker. So it's like adding another color. So you can see there's an edge on there already, and I'm simply just outlining all the strokes. So it's almost like adding another color because it's just darkening up your strokes there. But all you're doing is using the same color and going over every stroke. So outlining. Isn't that fun? It just makes it just, I don't know, look a little, I don't know, it's more drawn. So I really like that. And then at that point, maybe you want to add some of our, just our dots or some of our little fine bullet point shapes. You know, it's really up to you. And you're good to go. I'm going to do another one real quick because we're going to add some different styles here or different elements. So let's see. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with the same thing. I'm going to start with my word. And then we can outline it. I'm going to take a different color this time, but you can certainly use the same color. I'm going to outline it again, but I'm not going to touch the stroke here. I'm going to leave a little bit of a white space. And just for reference, that white space is called a moat, like a moat around a castle. I just learned that this year, and I just think it's a great way to remember it. Never called it that before, but yes, that makes sense. So I'm just taking a bullet point of a different color, and I'm outlining the word or the letters, but I'm leaving that little bit of white space. So I'm just going to go all the way around, but not touch my letters. And this is just where I really start to have fun. You know, you spend time learning the letters, and you want them to look, you know, you want them to look, quote, right. But then we can just abandon the strict rules, although I don't think they're very strict, but we can abandon the rules and then just start having fun. That's the whole idea of this, is to have fun. And so I'm just going around, leaving that little moat. And I guess in a sense, what I'm doing, you know, we have rules for our letters, and I guess in a sense, what I'm doing is adding other rules about our decoration. This rule was, oh, let's touch every stroke and outline it that way. This rule was, let's leave a little white space. And I think I'm going to do the same thing for this. This is called a counter space. That shape inside of a letter is called a counter space. So if you get into other calligraphy, you'll hear that term. So you can do the counter space as well. And the E actually has a little counter space too. So just there we go, another way to use that outline idea. Now I'm going to stick with this one for another second here. You can keep going. I mean, it's really endless. If you outline again, this time I'm going to leave a little bit bigger space, and I've gone back to my original color, and I'm outlining it again, but leaving a bigger gap. I don't know if I remember doing this in like elementary school a lot, probably when I should have been doing something else, but just kind of keep going until I'm just fill up a whole paper outlining. And I just loved looking at how the outline sort of changed as you went along. At this point, I'm going to go back to I'm only using 2 colors at this point. And you know what, pardon me, my phone is ringing, and I just want to make sure it isn't one of you guys. And I don't believe it is. Where's my list real quick? Sorry about that. I just want to make sure no one's having a problem here. Nope, it isn't. Okay. Sorry about that. So what you can just keep going. Outline it again. Maybe I'll take the brush this time and outline, maybe with a thicker stroke. So you can see I'm just using the side of my brush. I can turn the page, whatever's easiest. And I'm just making a fatter outline with the edge of my brush there. And that time I touched the color the prior. So if I did that, it could blend a little bit. These markers do blend pretty well. Even if you don't use the blender, they blend with each other. So it may blend a little bit, and that's okay. We will embrace that. But if you don't want it to blend, I think I did mention, we talked about it a little bit last time, having some kind of permanent marker, like these Zig memory system markers are a good permanent black marker. They come in other colors, but I use the black. Or the Micron Pigma, sorry about to get that focus there. Pigra Micron pens, they come in colors as well, but I use the black, and they're a fine point marker, but they're permanent, so they won't bleed. So oftentimes I will outline something in black, and then there's no blending, and that just gives sort of a different look. And then if I were to continue on with other colors, again, there's not going to be any blending or bleeding, and that can give you a different look as well. So you can just keep going on and on with this one, or add some of these ideas to your other letters. And I'm going to stick with the micron for a second here. I'm going to write our word again. Just going to do it in a different color here. And we're going to see what else we can do with the micron. So instead of outlining it with the same color, or with a lighter color or something, or another Tombow pen, you can outline it in the black micron. And it just gives a different look to it. I'm doing this sort of quickly. You don't have to do it this fast, except for this next part. Okay, so I've outlined my word here in the black. And sometimes what I'll do is take my micron and do a very quick job of it. Just almost like a flick that we were doing, you know, that sort of pulling stroke. I'll just outline it just fast. Like, okay, there's that side of the L. There's the bottom of the L. There's that side of the L. So you can see I'm not trying to match it up. I'm just doing it really quickly. This is one of my favorite things to do. I just sort of went around that O, bottom of the O. I'm just outlining it, but I'm not really concerned that this is a perfect outline like our little motes here, right? And I'm doing it very quick strokes in parts. So that was that left side of the V, bottom of the V, upstroke of the V, over to the E. So you can see I'm just breaking it up into my strokes and doing it very quickly. And I do have that on our, in your handout, if I can find it, in a couple places. Okay, so I wrote, and I can talk more about some of these other features, but I wrote this word and then I just quickly took my marker and just did these quick strokes to get that real loose look. Okay, you can see it again here. And then I did go over some of these too, but I have a series of these quick strokes. So you can do it again. You can leave it like that and it looks kind of fun. It almost maybe looks cut out. Or you can even do it again and just get a series of these black strokes. I don't know, it looks kind of like there's movement there. And so I don't know, I like doing a lot of that with the thin microns. And again, I can't resist adding a dot here or there as a feature. So there's just another way to decorate our letters. Now, I could write a whole nother word, but I think I'll use this one to integrate some of those brush marks that we did. Just checking my time here, okay. Some of those brush marks that we did earlier, you can use right on top of your letters. For example, like I said, cuter the better. You have this word love. Well, we can take another marker and we can do that little heart shape that we did at the beginning and add that on or next to our letters. So you can incorporate those designs right in the letter. And why not outline them too, right? So you can add those as well. Where's my list? I want to make sure I don't forget something here. Outline color, outline with black. Okay, next thing. Now what I'd like to show you is the shadows. Shadows are fun. So if any questions so far, like I said, there's so few of us, you can just jump in and we can answer those, but I'll just keep going until I hear from you. Shadows. All right. I've learned a couple ways to do shadows. So there may be others, but I'm going to kind of show you how I learned to do a shadow. And I'm going to use the same word that I used here just because I want to show you not only a shadow, but a highlight. We'll see the difference. I'm going to show you this alphabet. I'm going to do this in all capitals. And I'm really quickly going to explain. See how I'm turning my brush to get these thick strokes on my capitals? I'm going to show you how to do this alphabet, where like I mentioned before, where every stroke is a thick stroke. So I'll show you that, but I just want to use that alphabet for now. So here's my word. and I want to do a shadow. So I'm going to take, you can do a lighter color, darker color. It really doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. I'm going to take a darker color, and I have to decide where I want my shadow to be on every letter. And usually I do to the right and below my letter. To the right and below. Okay, and we usually call this a drop shadow. Oops. Daniela is here late. All right, we'll have her come in. Hang in there, everybody. Take a breath, get a sip of coffee or something. Daniela, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, you're late.
Yes.
But welcome. This will be recorded, so you can always go back and look at the recording. And then, of course, I'll be available all week. If you have questions, you can email me, okay? But
Okay.
it's nothing so super scientific that you can't catch on. Basically what we've been doing, and I'll just do a quick recap and then we'll continue. Oh, I'm still am pinned. You can still see my video, everybody, right? Okay. There we go. And let's see. Okay, I am spotlighted. Okay, good. All right, so basically we went over in one of your packets, you had these different strokes and shapes you could make. If you do have background noise, I'd appreciate a mute. But you can certainly come back in to ask a question. But I have a couple sheets just with fun things to do with your markers, with your letters, okay? So we pretty much got through this whole first page, and we're on to the second page. So right now we're doing some shadows, okay? Okay. So how do we do shadows? I usually do them where I put the shadow to the right of my letter and below. Now you can do it all different ways, but this is what we're going to do right now. To the right and below. And what do I mean by that? Well, once I get to, and I'm going to use my bullet point for this. And I'm going to look at my letter. I'm going to say, okay, what do I mean when I want my shadow to the right of my letter? Well, to the right of this stroke means right here. Okay, I'm just going to draw this line, leaving that little moat like we did before. And it can touch there if you want. So that's to the right of that stroke, right? Well, I'm not done with the L. This is to the right too, right? And I'm going to add below. I'm going to draw my line below. So there is a shadow that is to the right and below. I'm going to continue that, and as you continue, you will see the effect kind of take shape as you do everything the same with each letter. To the right and below, and actually that's kind of to the right also as we come around. Curves, you have to think a little bit, but I'm happy that that's right and or below and a little bit to the right. Then we have to the right and below. Okay. Moving on to our H, to the right, to the right. Oh, there's a below and a below, to the right and below. And you can see the more you do it, the effect really works. You know, when you have just one letter done, it's kind of like, what's going on? But as you keep going, it really takes shape. To the right and below, to the right and below. And also there's a little below right here. So there you have a very basic shadow on your letters, okay? So you can you can practice that whole thing. And sometimes I do say it out loud to myself, just so I remember where I'm going. To the right, to the below. And if you, depending on your word, if you have a curved letter, you may need to make some decisions where the below ends, and I'll show you a few other curved letters to show you what I mean. But let me show you another style of shadow. I'm going to do the same word. And this is just in our capitals that I'm going to show you shortly by the end of today, this sort of chunky capital letters. Now let's take, this time we used our bullet point and we left a little gap there. But what if we take, I'm going to take a lighter color. Let's see. I'm going to take a lighter color, but I'm going to use the brush point this time. But I'm going to do right and below still, but with a brush. And this time I'm going to touch the letter. I'm not going to leave that little moat. So I've gone to the right, and below. Moving on to my next letter, to the right and below. To the right, below, and then this is, I'd say to the right, and I stop there, to the right, and my below ends right about here. And continue on, and this time I'm all to the right and below again, but I'm touching the letter. Okay. And there is another drop shadow. Now that one looks pretty cool, doesn't it? I really like that. The wider shadow in the lighter color really looks like the letters are sort of sitting on top of the paper. All right, I'm going to show you one more, and then perfect. I'm going to show you one more, then we'll just take a teeny little break. I can ask you guys if you have any questions, and then we'll move on. I'm just trying to think of what color I want to do. I think I'm going to do back to my red. All right, so one more, we'll use the same word, but one more shadow, and this time I'm going to add a highlight. So my shadow, I'm going to take a darker color this time. My shadow, I'm going to do the same way as I did here, to the right and below, just like I did here with my brush marker. So having done this, maybe if you're doing this the third time, it might become a little bit easier as to where the shadow goes. It just takes some practice. Okay. I know I did that pretty fast, but since we did it 3 times already, now what I'm going to do is add a highlight. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to take a lighter color, and I'm going to go, instead of right and below, I'm going to go left. Whoops, sorry, off screen. I was writing it down. Left and above, just the opposite. So basically, it's wherever there isn't a shadow, I'm going to add what I'm going to call a highlight, because I'm going to use a lighter color. So I'm going to go to the left and above this time. Left and above. Left. And see, you can, if you can see it, it's sort of blending, which is fine. It's kind of, you know, just the nature of the marker. We get a little bit of a blend there, kind of like that. Left and above, left, that's above, left, above, left and above. And you get that it almost looks like the letters are maybe carved in or sticking up, because you've got all the highlights on one side and then the shadows. Oop, there's an above, right? Or yep, above I missed right there. And I just love that effect. And hopefully that came through. I know when I first scanned and printed these, it might not have been really clear on your copy. Unfortunately, with the color copies, everyone's color copy is a little bit different. So hopefully that came through, but that's what this was supposed to be demonstrating on your handout. That highlight on one side and then the shadow on the other. Okay. So it is, and that was, oh good, I got through exactly what I wanted to get through in the first hour. So what I'd like to do is just, I'm going to actually stop that recording.